What is the Electoral College? The Electoral College is the system that the United States uses to select its presidents. But it is also a system that fundamentally and systematically represses the voices of minorities in this country. My name is Ben Waddell. I'm an associate professor of sociology and criminology at Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. And I am starting this campaign as a means of bringing awareness to the Electoral College, with the hopes that we'll start having a serious conversation about whether or not to keep it. The United States is a representative democracy, which means that in theory, everyone's vote counts, and it carries the same weight. But when it comes to selecting presidents in the United States, the votes of minorities carry far less weight than white votes. Here's why. So how does the Electoral College actually work? There are 538 Electoral College votes. These votes are representative of a number of things. One has to do with the number of senators that each state has. As everyone knows, the United States has 100 senators. Now, those 100 senators are part of the 538. The other part come from the 435 representatives in Congress, as well as the 3 representatives from the District of Columbia. And so when we add all that up, it comes to 538. To win a presidential election in the United States, regardless of the popular vote count, you need to win 270 Electoral College votes. The Electoral College votes are cast by delegates. Each state designates delegates who give their state's Electoral College votes to the candidate who wins the popular vote in their state. And so if you get past 270, regardless of the total outcome of the popular vote, you win the presidency. Now, typically the popular vote and the Electoral College tally go in the same direction. In fact, in all the elections that have been held in the United States, they've only gone in opposite directions 5 times. But 2 of those times have come in the last 20 years. Donald Trump won the presidential election in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, despite losing the popular vote by nearly 3 million votes because he won the Electoral College. He got past 270 votes. And then in 2000, Al Gore lost to President Bush because he won the popular vote by over 500,000 votes at the national level, but lost the Electoral College vote. Those 2 instances reveal the cleavage that the Electoral College can create within society due to the fact that the popular vote doesn't necessarily have to go in the same direction as the Electoral College. The ultimate word on who wins the presidency is the Electoral College in the United States. Now, our textbooks tell us that the Electoral College exists in order to balance power between rural states and urban states. The myth goes, if it weren't for the Electoral College, the urban states would govern and the rural states would have very little say in government. But that is a myth. In 1790, in the first US Census, 95% of the country lived in rural states. And thus, it's extremely hard to imagine that the urban-rural balance was a real part of the conversation surrounding the Electoral College. So why was the Electoral College created? Well, if we go back to 1787 and we look at the Constitutional Convention that took place in Philadelphia, we start to get a sense of what was going on in the heads of the folks that created the Electoral College. The biggest concern for southern states at that convention was representation in Congress, as well as the Senate. So, what the southern states argued for was 2 senators per every individual state. They also argued, however, for the 3/5 compromise. The 3/5 compromise was the idea that each individual slave would be counted in the US Census as a 3/5 person, and therefore that would increase the population of representative people in the South, and therefore the number of Congress people that would go to Congress from southern states. And that would balance out the representation between the South and the North. The problem, of course, for the South was 36% of their population was enslaved in 1787. And so, as a result of that convention, we get the 3/5 compromise, and we get the 2 senators per state, irregardless of population, and that creates a system that locks in an overrepresentation of rural areas in the United States. Now today, in the absence of slavery, the Electoral College continues to suppress minority votes, and this is why. So you might ask, how does the Electoral College suppress minority voices today? Well, although slavery no longer exists, and although the environment that we live in is very different than it was in 1787, today we live in an environment in which minorities and progressive voices tend to be stacked on the West and the East Coast, as well as in urban cities. What happened over the 20th century was a great migration out of rural America. White people and minority people left across the board. But minorities left the rural countryside at a much faster rate than white people. In fact, if we look at the countryside today, over 78% of people in rural America are white, whereas only about 60% of people in urban America are white. And so we see this massive divide in between white and minority folks in terms of the states and the environments that they live in. Black individuals, or African Americans, left during the Great Migration that begins around the 1920s, 1930s, and stretches into the 1960s, and saw millions of African Americans leaving the South, going to the coast, going to urban cities, and going to states that typically vote for Democrats. And so what happens due to the great migration of minorities out of rural America is rural America is left with a high concentration of white conservative rural voices, and urban America is stacked with more progressive and minority voices. Now, if it were for a popular vote, it would not matter. But because we exist in an electoral college system that favors the rural countryside, there is a deep overrepresentation of rural, conservative, white votes in the United States today. This campaign is an effort to bring awareness to the fact that Black, Latino, Hispanic, Native American, and Asian voices are undervalued within the electoral college system. And that if we ever truly hope to say Black lives matter, or minority voices matter in this country, we will have to get rid of or reform the electoral college system first. Through this campaign, I will use your funds to support videos, animation, and in time, a longer documentary that speaks to the electoral college, its origins, and the need to reform it or abolish it altogether. You can support this project by going to our GoFundMe page and supporting us there. You can also reach out to me for larger donations to think about how to move this project forward. And of course, if you're interested in influencing this story, you can reach out to me directly via my email, and we can have a conversation about that as well. I appreciate your time. Keep fighting for the value of everyone's vote, and have a wonderful day.